Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Pacific Historic Parks History Talks, brought to you in partnership with Edutainment Learning. I'm Weston Saito, the Education Interpretation Research Coordinator for Pacific Historic Parks. We are the nonprofit organization who works with the National Park Service to support Pearl Harbor National Memorial in Hawaii, home of the USS Arizona Memorial, War in the Pacific Historical Park in Guam, American Memorial Park in Saipan, Kalapapa National Historical Park in Molokai, and our Diamond Head State Monument here in Hawaii. Our mission is to remember, honor, and understand World War II in the Pacific. Through education and interpretive programs, we strive to carry on the memory of historical events and honor those who are involved. History Talks is an interactive series designed to share the history and stories of Pearl Harbor and World War II in the Pacific. Today, we are honored to have as our guest speakers Annette and Warren Hull, founders of AnnWar Productions, a Las Vegas, Nevada-based independent film company. Both Annette and Warren hold film-related certificates from UCLA, Annette in independent film producing, and Warren in feature film screenwriting. Today, they will be discussing their newest film production, A Band to Honor, regarding the U.S. Navy Band No.22, the last band of the battleship USS Arizona. Annette, Warren, go ahead, all you.
Guys,
Hi.
hey, welcome everybody.
Hi, thanks everybody for joining us today.
Yeah, we're really excited about the project. When Annette and I first thought we wanted to become filmmakers in our senior years, we knew that we wanted to tell good stories, and we wanted to start out slow. We didn't want to start with a feature. Or try to start out with a feature. So what we did was we zeroed in on a story that meant a lot to us, and that was a story with the USS Arizona. Now, we didn't really know exactly what we were going to do with the Arizona. We just knew that we wanted to do something to honor America. I'm a veteran. My father was a veteran. My mom was a Rosie the Riveter. So eventually we narrowed it down to the USS Arizona Band. And a lot of people don't know about the band. And that was a story that we wanted to focus in on, is one of the unknown stories. Because if you've ever had the good fortune to go to Hawaii and to visit the memorial, and you've been humbled to stand before the 1,177 names that are on the memorial wall, you know that each one of those names has a story behind it. So what we did was we decided that we were going to pick 21 of those names to expand on and tell the story. And again, I don't think there's a story out there like the one that we've got coming out. We're both pretty proud of the project, and I'll let Annette share some of her feelings about it as well.
Yeah, with this project, you know, we took this upon ourselves, and we thought it was just going to be kind of like a 20-minute story. You know, we reached out to Pacific Historic Parks, and we were so blessed to have gotten Daniel Martinez as our first interview. So that's what we had, and that was our start. And then from there, it just snowballed into this person led to this person, and you know, in social media it opened up, you know, even more possibilities, and the story grew from what we thought was going to be 20 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was really kind of crazy, because when we first decided this was the path we were going to take in documentary filmmaking, what we learned is it's not like feature film writing where you have a script and these are the lines that people say, these are the things that you do to get from A to Z. What we found out with our project was we had to wait until we gathered all this information from the interviews before we could even do our timelines. And like Annette said, we came into it thinking that we would interview Daniel Martinez. We had the good fortune of being approved by the Navy for permission to go back and interview the folks at the Navy School of Music, and then with the U.S. Navy Band. And we were hoping along the way that we would be able to maybe get one or two survivors of the Pearl Harbor situation, and not just that, but maybe if we got really lucky, we would get an Arizona survivor. And all those things just kept happening to us. And it was like Annette just touched on, is we interviewed Daniel, and then we started to reach out to other people that were popping up on social media. And pretty soon we were talking to relatives of band members. And this person would say, hey, have you talked to this person? And eventually, and I'm going to read from our laundry list, and we're going to show you some pictures later, but the whole process for us, we ended up interviewing about 28 people. And so it started out with 5. And of those 28, we feature about 8 of them in our main feature documentary. And then we have 4 different, what we call featurettes, that also focus in on a segment of the band, and more so about, you know, the building of the memorial, what's happening at the School of Music, Navy music, and some of the people that we call the keepers of the legacy. And it just morphed into this amazing 2.5, 3-year project that has finally come into fruition, and we're excited for the release here in about a week on December 7th.
Yeah, with this, you know, it was funny because like when we interviewed Daniel, he would mention the little girl who was the Jitterbug winner, and her name was Pat Thompson. We didn't know who Pat was. And then lo and behold, probably a year and a half later, we had the opportunity to interview her. And she just added so much to the story, because now you get a sense of what the Battle of Music was like, and you have somebody who was there, and it just adds another layer to our story.
And one of the things we're really proud of with this is that we've watched tons of documentaries on the USS Arizona and the bombing of Pearl Harbor, like most people have. And we really think that we have a unique project. The documentary piece, yes, it's a documentary, but in most documentaries, you'll see that they take chunks of information and they interview survivors, and they interview, you know, the account of the day. And what we wanted to do was take it more as a film process, where we have the highs and the lows, and we try to weave a story for you. And you know, we found out so much about the Arizona and the Arizona band, and we were just very blessed. Like we keep saying it over and over and over again, is that we really believe that we were guided, because what we always thought were obstacles coming up. And I'll give you an example. You know, everybody thinks that doing a documentary is a piece of cake. You should crank it out in 6 to 7 months max. But what they don't understand is you're still building your story based on what you hear before. So there was a time where one week we would be in the city. The next week we were in Colorado Springs visiting Don Stratton and his lovely family. Then we were with Frank Eman, who's at 100 years old, was an amazing interview. And then a couple of weeks later, we put in motion a trip to visit Lou Conter in Grass Valley, California. So all these things kept going and going. And right when we were just about ready to finish up all these things and put a bow on it and say it's good, something else would happen and come along. And it would be, we can't finish it yet. We've got to interview this person. And again, the process was just fascinating for us. And we learned a lot about the Arizona, that the documentary is going to really show people a side of the USS Arizona story that nobody has heard before. And we've taken a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a face now to these people who lost their lives, and it's a face that was before the Arizona. It was their families, and then what the families had lost. And for us, it was a experience of a lifetime for us. I mean, the last 3 years, you know, every time we thought we had a stumbling block, it actually was a door that opened. And it opened into something even more than our wildest dreams.
Yeah. We're going to throw Lou Conter under the bus a little bit for delaying us. We had a chance to interview Lou, and most of you who are familiar with this site and these offerings, Lou is absolutely amazing. And he was gracious enough to give us some of his time. And as we interviewed Lou for this documentary, it became really apparent that Lou Conter had a great story also. And so we made the decision that we were going to do a documentary on Lou next. And we ended up writing a book with Lou as well. But that process also just opened up so many other doors and gave us such insight. And, you know, Lou's not featured a lot in this particular documentary, but the insight that he gives to you as a viewer is just really incredible, as it is with all of our interviewees. You know, these are people who were there, you know, and these are people who know the story. Daniel Martinez, I think you're going to see an interview with Daniel Martinez that very few people have seen. And he is amazing with his knowledge and his wealth of information. You know, we had the good fortune to interview, like I said, Don Stratton and Molly Kent. Molly wrote the book on the Arizona band, and Don, as everybody knows, is another USS Arizona survivor. We had the opportunity to meet Lauren Bruner, and Lauren is also just an amazing individual. So our blessings on this really exceeded our expectations and our hopes.
And then we were so fortunate to interview them before they passed, because we lost Donald Stratton, we lost Lauren Bruner, and we lost Molly Kent. So we were definitely blessed to get to meet them and to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, and they really did create a narrative in our story that is pretty incredible. But a lot of people worked to make this happen. We had a lot of good support. Social media has been great for us. We have a lot of good people who got behind us, who believed in the story. And again, I think it goes to the uniqueness of, even though the Arizona band really wasn't the Arizona band for very long, the point in time where they join or they graduate from school. So I'm gonna kind of let Annette take you through the process of where we are in regard to our storyline. So the storyline is pretty amazing. So
we end up starting a band to honor with giving you a history of Navy music. So Navy music starts in 1798. They basically have, you know, a drummer and a fifer, and then it moves on. And I know most of you probably know who John Philip Sousa is. Well, he comes in from 1917 to 1919. He used to be with the Marine Band, comes to the Navy. They bring him in as a lieutenant commander in the reserve, and he starts putting a mass band together, and also gets bands out to the ships. Okay, then in 1925, Charles Benter comes in, and he's the one that brings the Navy musician up to another level. And what he does is he increases their pay. He allows them to go ahead and wear civilian clothes on and off base. And then he also changes the uniform to the petty officer uniform. So he really elevates Navy music.
And at this time, they also start the Naval School of Music. Back then it was Navy School of Music. And that's basically a class, and we didn't know this, that musicians at the time were making application to this incredible music school. And it really was quite the process when you look at it and you see the talent of musician that were going through these schools. It's just amazing.
Well, and during this time, it was during the 20s, during the Great Depression. So these musicians had nowhere to go. They could go to college, but there was a lot of money. And so a lot of them, what they decided to do was go to the Navy School of Music. And for that, 1 out of 5 applicants actually make it into the school itself. So, and these are all coming in, they're all trained musicians. So then in 1935, you have James Thurman who comes in. And he is the one who really expands the school even more and decides to go from a mass band to these individual 20-piece bands that go out to the fleet. So all the battleships had these fleet bands. And he just, at the school, they worked on, classes in harmony, musical theory, history. And then they worked with these talented bandmasters to really work on their major and minor instruments.
one of the blessings that we had, and one of the difficulties that we had really when we first decided, hey, this thing is going to evolve into something bigger, was there's not a lot of photographs out there. There's not a lot specific to the band and to Navy music early. But as things slowed down for us, as we started working a little bit on Lou's book, more and more people came out of the woodwork, so to say, and started to touch base with us. They'd heard about this, they'd heard about that. And, we're really fortunate to have Marinelle Evans, who was a niece to Jack Scruggs, who is one of our featured band people. But we also had a young lady reach out to us, Lily Ray, who is the niece of our bandmaster, who is Frederick Kenney. And Lily Ray provided a lot of great information, and more people like that. Peggy Kent was another one, Molly's daughter, who was just so supportive and helpful, and sent us photographs that we didn't have access to, and that really nobody had access to. So that allowed us to really expand our section on the band, and to really give you a flavor of at least 3 or 4 of our band members. Now, obviously, we couldn't go into depth with all of them, but we give you a taste of what it was like. And more importantly, we give a great flavor of what it was like for them in school. And then when they graduate and make their way west, Annette's going to give you a little brief overview.
Yeah, before we do that, I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of what a bandmaster, in order to be a bandmaster at that time, you had to be a really good musician. You had to be in a fleet band. You had to have a good service rating, and you had to be promoted to first musician. And one of the people who they reached out to was Frederick Kenney. Now, with Frederick Kenney, his story, we were able to get his service records. So we kind of had to go through and really play detective to see what was going on. And what we found out is in 35, he was in Bremerton, and that's where he was a Navy musician there in Bremerton, Washington. But then in 1939, he became a first musician. Well, at becoming a first musician, he wanted to go on and be a bandmaster. And he requested to be a bandmaster, but he didn't hear anything. And then in 1940, he decided, well, I'm not hearing anything. So he let his enlistment expire. And then so he was actually out of the Navy. And then he, by law, he had to fill out the form for the draft. And then he was contacted and said, okay, let's get you back in the Navy, and you're going to be a bandmaster. So in late 1940, he then re-enlisted and went in to Washington, D.C., and became the bandmaster of Navy Band Unit 22.
Yeah, one of the things we discovered during our investigation and our detective work was that there's still a lot of misconceptions out there about Navy music, about this particular band. Not a lot of people know that Navy Band Unit 22 was initially assigned to the USS Tennessee. They weren't even supposed to be on the Arizona. And it was just by fate that the bandmaster who had Navy Band Unit 21 had a brother who was on the Tennessee. And even though he was assigned to the Arizona at that time, the military said, if you have a sibling or a father, you could go ahead and you could make a request to be transferred. And he put his request in, and they said, okay, your request is approved. You can go to the Tennessee.
Yeah, and Frederick had a choice. He said, he could either go on the Tennessee and take over Band Unit 21, or he could go back, he could go on the Arizona with his Navy Band Unit 22, and he chose the latter. He kept his Band Unit 22 and went on the Arizona. Yeah,
they had been together for 4 months during their training, and that was all in Washington, D.C. So when the time came to make a decision on, hey, you can just trade these kids for those kids, Frederick Kenney showed his true colors and how much he loved and cared about his kids, because he stayed with them. Yeah. And it was really, that destiny that we think is so ironic, is that Frederick Kenney really had a couple chances to not be a part of infamy and be a part of what eventually happened to the USS Arizona. And, you know, destiny had a different thing in mind for him. So, you know, we found it so fascinating, the journey that these kids take. And that's really the focus of where we are. We kind of start out with Navy music, we give a history. And we also found some amazing photographs of the Arizona when it was being built. And we're going to give you a little video not a video overview, but a PowerPoint deal with some of the things that we put together when we did our timeline here in a little bit. But the whole process was just one discovery after another, and really very, very rewarding to go through that. A lot of surprises, one of which is that Navy band members are still in the Navy. And, you know, the jobs that they had to perform were very, very Navy-ish. And so it's going to be an eye-opener. We are so pleased with the way that the story unfolded. Obviously, it's very tragic when December 7th comes along, but we think we take people on a really nice ride, and we're pretty proud of things.
Yeah, we're shining a light, you know, on this. And so some of the, we have a little bit, you know, of a section on the bandmaster, Frederick Kenney. And then we go into Clyde Williams, which is Molly Kent's brother. And that we had a chance to interview her in Kansas City. And so Clyde was from Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and he and his sister were very close, and music was a big part of their family. And, you know, they were in the marching bands. They played with, you know, Clyde played with the local college. I mean, there was just a big, big part of their family. And so Molly, and unfortunately, the last time Molly saw her brother was when the family drove out to DC for the graduation in May of '41. And that was the last time she saw him.
Yeah.
Our next band member is Emmett Isaac Lynch. Yeah. And Emmett is the older band member of the group. And he grew up in an orphanage in I believe it was Texas, if I'm not, and he was one that kind of took a little bit of a leadership role with all the band members, and he was one that graduated from college with a degree in music, had a minor in economics. Yeah. He was married, which was unusual, and you know, he didn't have a family, and what happened is this band unit became his family. And so it's pretty powerful. And the last band member we feature is Jack Scruggs.
And Jack, we had just gotten back from Hawaii and the University of Arizona. We'd gone down there. They do some amazing stuff there. And we read an article about one of the band members' relatives was giving talks at the library in Long Beach. So we reached out to the Long Beach Library and told them who we are, what we were doing, and if they would put her in touch with us. And we were so lucky to have Marinelle Scruggs, Marinelle Evans. Her uncle was Jack Leo Scruggs. And Marinelle Evans come aboard with us, and she opened up her home, and we gave a great interview. She was just amazing with how much she could recall from her mother, who was Jack's sister. And she was just so powerful with her memories. And later down the road, she discovered this treasure chest of photographs that really allowed us to do a great montage of the boys when they were in Hawaii. And Marinelle really hit home for us on how important family was to all these kids, and the devastation that the families must have felt losing their children. You know, 1,177 just on the Arizona, 21 members of the band. But those memories now still, almost 80 years now, 79 this year, are so powerful and so strong. And we just wondered what would have happened if these kids would have not perished on December 7th. What kind of lives would they have lived? And we've kind of come to the agreement that they all would have lived great lives and been amazing musicians. So those are the kind of insights that we try to give during our whole process. And it really is one of those things that when we finished the project and we had time to look back on it, we just are in awe of the fact that we got to go through this journey, and we're so happy that we'll be able to give it to you guys as well. One more piece before we get into the PowerPoint that we're going to give you a little bit of visual instead of hearing us blab, is we were all done with this project. And we put in stock music, and it was good. It wasn't like wow good, but it was good.
Yeah.
And so we're just getting ready to ship it out to our distributor, and we got a phone call from a gentleman named Peter Hackman, who was an agent for a composer. And he was like, yeah, I have a client, and we'd really like to talk to you guys about maybe getting involved in one of your projects. And that night, a composer for a documentary that hasn't been done, but maybe we should explore this because these are musicians, and there's no better way to honor a musician than have a composer work on their project. So we were introduced to Holly Amber Church, and let us tell you, she wrote the entire score for this documentary. And she is the heart and soul. She gave us the heart and soul that really took the project over the top. And she's incredible. The music that she provided us is incredible. And it is a story within the story. When you hear her music and feel the beats and you watch and listen, it's unlike any other documentary that's out there. And I'm not knocking any of the other documentaries, but ours features music. And we are so pleased that we were delayed in time to where we didn't have to say, oh, we're sorry, that's already gone to the distributor, because the touch that Holly puts on this documentary will bring tears to your eyes.
Yeah, just talking about it. Oh.
Yeah. Very, very powerful. And so at the end of the day, when we look at it, we really are pleased with the process and how we attack things. And it really was an attack. Because it was just on the go. And we think we've spun a pretty good tale for you. We've got some great animation on the attack on Pearl Harbor. We've also got a little clip that we were able to secure for our Battle of Music section. And if you're not familiar with Battle of Music was the big event that Fleet Services was putting on. And 4 of the bands played the night before the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Arizona didn't play, the band.
Which was a misconception.
Which was another misconception.
Yeah, that they had played.
Yeah.
And
so we've cleared that up, but that piece is excellent. And we get to feature the Andrews Sisters a little bit. So if you're a fan of Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, you're really going to enjoy that piece. And then we give you the gut shot shortly thereafter, because we all know what happened on December 7th.
Yeah. So do we want to?
Yeah, I think we're going to screen share. We're going to go into a screen share, so stick with us. We're hoping we don't screw this up too bad. But we're going to give it a shot and just kind of take you through some of the images that we have. So, like I said, we had the opportunity to interview some amazing people. So these are basically the interviewees that we have for this particular segment of the narrative feature.
Yeah, these were the ones for the feature of A Band to Honor. We interviewed so many more people, and those are people that are featured in our featurettes, and that will be available once the DVD comes out. We'll have those featurettes attached to that. So
and really the 2 primary people, really 3 primary people that really tell the narrative on this are Daniel Martinez, who's the chief historian, as everybody knows, at the Pearl Harbor National Memorial, and Michael Bays. He was amazing. He's with the U.S. Navy Band, and Michael is the chief musician there, and he's the drum major. So knowledgeable. And then Frank Eman, when we interviewed Frank was 100 years old, And we kept worrying about him. Annette was worried about him, you know, being tired, or did he need a break?
And he just kept going. He just, like, you know, we'd stop and he would say, "What are you stopping for?" And he just, you know, he was there. He was on the Pennsylvania, and you'll see him describe that he saw, goes, "I saw things falling off the plane. I just didn't know where they were until he looked over at Ford Island, and then it started coming together that they were under attack."
We have a very, very powerful moment with Frank, and it will bring tears to your eyes when he talks about the last time he saw the Arizona band. And we don't want to do too much of a spoiler on it, but when he was discussing, just minutes before, he was discussing the joy that he had being a performer that evening. You know, he was I would say a higher end musician at the time, and I think they were Navy Band No.8. And Frank has a very powerful moment where he's talking happy-go-lucky, he's remembering, and then just like that, his tone changes and he goes back to the last time he saw the Arizona band, and that he knows that they're gone the next day. And you'll see it in the documentary that he is back in 1941 on December 7th. And very, very powerful. And then, of course, we have Don Stratton and Lou Conter, who are both Arizona survivors. Lou, we spent hours with Lou, and obviously with his book, we spent hours more. Don was amazing. Very blessed to be with Don and his family. And then all of our ladies, you know, Molly Kent, Pat Thompson gave a great recollection of the jitterbug contest that she was in. And then Mary Nell, of course, was she was a rock for us and getting us information and photographs. So it was pretty special. So what we did was, just what makes us unique, we think, is we have a lot of family photos that are unseen, and we incorporate all those into the presentation. Some really cool stuff. So we have some really, really cool stuff. We have a lot of unique documents and news clippings. We've got certificates. We've got, like Annette said, we have the service records of people.
Yeah, and with those service records, you know, again, it's just going through, because you really have to research to paint the story, especially the timelines, because you're told one thing, but then when you look at the documents, it definitely is painting a different picture. Probably one of our pride pictures that I absolutely love is this certificate with Jack Scruggs, that he completed the course of study at the U.S. Navy School of Music, you know, May 23rd of 1941. I love that. We also were fortunate enough to have the Western Union telegraphs that Clyde Williams' family received in December, on December 20th.
It's Kenney's too.
Oh, that's Kenney's on there as well, right? And then we have it from Clyde that their family, he was missing in action, so they didn't get to celebrate the holidays, you know.
And then the other thing that we think is pretty unique for us is we have great animation. We ran into a YouTube kid that did amazing animation on the actual attack, and we've incorporated that in. That has like 2.5 million views. So we were very fortunate to work out a deal with him to where we could incorporate this and give people a little bit different look on what happened that day. Then the other thing that we're really proud of is we were able to find some very unique historical videos. You know, we've got the christening of the Arizona, we've got the Andrews sisters, which we're really proud of, and we have a little clip on the Neptunus Rex, which is a ceremony for crossing the line in the equator. And then we actually have footage of where the Navy band members of the Arizona, what their battle station was, and it was the powder handling room. So it's not the Arizona band, but it's similar, and it gives you a really good look at what they did the day, the December 7th date. And then lastly, like we said, we wanted to give Holly her just due on this.
Shout out.
Is that these are all the cues, they're called, that Holly did for this project, and she was amazing. And like I said, she does have a soundtrack that's coming out on it. we put on background. We have a background. Our whole house is filled with her music and has been for a long, long time. Where we were on the project and how unique we think it is. Anything else?
I don't know. I think we're ready for questions.
Okay, I think that we kind of have pounded you with a lot of things, and like I said, we're just really proud of the project, and we're pleased that there's been interest in it, and we're excited to get it out there to the public, and
we're honored
give
that
them a
we
look.
get to, that we're blessed and honored that we get to tell this story.
Yeah, very,
So.
very. So guys, if you can hear us.
Yeah, absolutely. First,
Okay.
That's all we've
thank you
got.
so much for an awesome presentation and your dedication to this awesome work. So I've already gotten a few questions, and anyone else, if you have questions for Warren and or Annette, just message them in the chat. The first question is first of all, thank you guys for your dedication.
Oh, yeah.
All of the history and keeping that history alive. We know that you touched on it a bit, but growing up, because we have some students here, what kind of advice could you give to students who are interested in becoming filmmakers, specifically filmmakers regarding historical events?
Okay, the simplest thing that I can tell people is don't be afraid to do it. You know, we hemmed and hawed for a lot of years on waiting for people to make our stories happen. And I had been a writer for a while and written a couple screenplays, and we did some documentary concepts. But when we decided to jump in, we decided to jump in. And it's kind of like when I learned how to swim, it was, I'm not going to go into the shallow end and wade in. As I went to the deep end, we decided to jump into it. And we needed to find something that we were passionate about. And your passion is going to carry you.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is you know, you can't let fear determine anything. You just have to do it. And also, we never, ever thought we would fail. We just kept moving forward. I was, you know, an amateur photographer, and I went full bore into the filming. Anything I could get my hands on, I would study. I would take online classes, and I did everything so that I could film the interviews. We did everything except the music, thank goodness for Holly. But I mean, we taught ourselves, and also people, you know, over 50, you can do this.
Yeah,
you know, we did it.
One of the things about us is we both come from an educational background. So we both taught for years and years at the high school and college level. And don't be afraid to learn new things.
Yeah.
And don't have an ego. Hey, people are going to like what you do. People are not going to like what you do. You know, we both kind of had a thick skin. We were in athletics for years. I was a head football coach for a long time. So some people love me, some people not so much. But that's just the way that it is. What may be awesome in your eyes might not be so much in somebody else's eyes. And that's okay, because we're going to reach a group. And as students, you guys need to know too, that the only person you really have to please is yourself.
Yeah.
Make sure that, you know, you're doing something that makes you happy, because there's going to be tough times.
Yeah.
And you're going to get slowed down. You're going to have road bumps, but you just have to push forward. You just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and get to the finish line.
Well, and I think also is, yeah, you'll have those road bumps, but realize it's probably just another door opening.
Yep.
And, you know, for us, that's exactly what it was.
You know, and we got a little bit frustrated that we weren't finishing up as quickly as we'd like.
Especially when everybody's asking you.
Yes. You know, it's like, you guys not done yet? You know, what are you doing? Or you guys are, well, number one, we have day jobs, you know, we have to pay the bills. But number two is we learned to sit back after about the second or third time that stuff started happening. Like, okay, why are we not getting this done? And about a week would go by, and then another opportunity would pop up. You know, Lily Ray would pop up and say, hey, you know, I'm a relative of Frederick Kenney's. And it'd be like, oh, wow, we make this connection with her. And then Marinelle would pop up and say, hey, you know, I found more photos. I was going through my mom's things.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID, yeah. And, you know, the people at the Navy School of Music were amazing. You know, they would pop, we hadn't been back there for a year and a half. And their people are like, hey, wait, we just found this great photo. Hope you're not done yet. And each element that these people brought was just amazing. You know, our time with Lou Conter was, we got some amazing stuff for the beginning of our documentary during the introduction and the welcome that we would never have had if we didn't have Lou. And we didn't experience the remembrance ceremony on December 7th of 2019.
Yeah.
So every road bump was a blessing.
Sorry for going so long.
Yeah.
Just, it means a lot to us.
No, you guys are fine. Thank you for the detailed answer. I'm sure it's very appreciated with kids who are thinking about going into that profession. So we have a question regarding the documentary. They wanted to know, do you reference any other bands of the Pacific Fleet outside of the Band of 8 USS Pennsylvania and Band of 21 of the USS Tennessee? Are there any other bands that are referenced besides the Arizona?
Well, we do. We were able to find a couple photos from the Tennessee, and then of course having Frank Eamon, and he was with the Pennsylvania, and Frank offers some insight, talks about his band a little bit, you know, because they did win the night of the 6th, and you know, he provides some insight on that. But in terms of going into the details about the specific band members, no, you know, we don't really go into a list, but just kind of as a sidebar, one of the things that Michael Bays is doing, and it's an amazing project, and we don't know what we'll be able to do with it yet, but he has gone through and documented every single band member that was in Pearl Harbor during December 7th.
Yeah.
So we'll probably put something like that up on our website later down the road.
Yeah, or on social media. We're on Facebook or Instagram, but yeah, for us, I mean, again, there was so much information.
Yep.
We have a limited time, and our focus was on the Arizona. So you know, fortunately, we didn't have an opportunity to really look at all the other bands that were involved, you know, in Block Arena, the Battle of Music, and during that time.
We kind of came up with a saying that we've embraced and specific to the Arizona, and to really every ship and everything, is that behind every single one of those 1,177 names is a story. And a lot of them are just so amazing. I mean, we could probably spend the rest of our lives taking different elements of just the Arizona and telling a story of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of those kids, and really developing that, because it is true. You find out so many things, and that's the tragedy of it, is so many lives lost. But you know, we managed to take a handle of 21 of them, and that's our contribution right now, is those 21 individuals who made up the USS Arizona band.
Well, we're all very excited for the release, and we've already had some people message us that they've already pre-ordered.
Oh, thank you.
So we had this question come by actually a couple of times, and they want to know, what other projects do you guys have in mind for the future?
Well, we've got a couple. We've got 2 right now that are technically in production. We just finished up Lou Conter's book, which was an amazing experience, and we'll talk about Lou another time, I'm sure. But what a wonderful, wonderful man Lou Conter is. And for us to get that in-depth time with Lou and learn about his life and get a book done with him, we're hoping for December 7th on the release. It doesn't look like that's going to happen per se. Not per se. It probably isn't going to happen because of COVID slows. But that's going to be released sometime, hopefully before the end of the year still. And then we're doing a documentary on Lou's life. And then the other documentary and book that we're involved with right now, it's kind of away from the military theme, is we're doing a project on that centers upon a gentleman named Sonny Janney. And a lot of people don't know his name, but Sonny Janney was the caretaker for Mike Webster. And if anybody out there is a pro football fan, Mike Webster played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was patient zero in the CTE
Yeah.
Disclosure. He was the first football player that was diagnosed with CTE, eventually died from the disease. And we are exploring that from Mr. Janney's standpoint, because he was an immigrant from India that came and befriended Mike when he was down on his luck and really became his caretaker. So those are two of the ones we have. And we do have
Keeping us
one.
busy, that's
Yeah,
for
we do
sure.
have one on the back burner that's a personal family one that deals, we're going to do a documentary on the murder of Bugsy Siegel. And for those of you who don't know who Bugsy Siegel is, I do have a book out on the Bugsy Siegel murder. We'll leave it very short that my family was involved in the murder of Mr. Siegel, who is a famous gangster back in the 40s, was given credit to the being the father of Las Vegas. And yeah, my family was involved in clipping him and covering up the murder. It's a fascinating story, and one that eventually we'll get to after we get all these other things done. So if you're from Vegas, you know who Bugsy Siegel is. So yeah.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you guys have a lot of exciting projects on the horizon. So we have one final question, and then I'll hand it off to Weston. So Jim, obviously you know Jim from Pacific Historic Parks. He wants to know if you could tell us about your 2005 trip to Hawaii with a high school band from Washington State.
Good job, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in 2005, both Warren and I were working in Kennewick, Washington, and Warren was assistant principal and I was the athletic trainer. And so the band director had invited us to come along with them on this trip to Hawaii. They were to perform in the Waikiki Holiday Parade and then some other events around the island. So we went. I did the medical. Warren, was the heavy hitter as far as discipline. And so one of our trips was out to the memorial.
Yeah. And okay, at the time I was assistant principal in charge of discipline. And my fear in that whole thing was we had 130 band kids that are ages 15 to 18. And I understood what this trip to the Arizona meant. And my concern at the time was, I'm not sure these kids understand. They did.
Oh, sorry.
Very emotional.
So yeah, it was, because I could still see it. So all of us are out there, and two of the band members, the lead band members, actually lay a wreath down, and you couldn't hear a pin drop during that.
Yeah, very, very powerful. And we were both awed at the behavior of those kids, which speaks volumes for the two directors that were out there, Randy Buer and Jason Rose.
Yeah.
But those kids got it. And I think that's kind of what gave birth to this, is that, we have people out there when you say, hey, you're doing what do you guys do? And we say, oh, we make documentary films now. And they say, oh, what are you making your film on? Oh, the USS Arizona and their band. And they go, oh, are people still interested in what happened in Vietnam? And you just, and these are people that aren't much younger than I am. And it was at that moment that, we knew that we have to have these educational programs. The programs that you guys do are so necessary and they're so powerful. And if we ever lose the ability to remember, or the importance that we place on remembering situations like the Arizona and what happened and the lives that were lost, we're in big trouble as a country. We need to appreciate the past, and like Luke Hunter says, we need to always learn from the past, and we can't forget, because if you forget, then you're destined to repeat it.
Yeah.
And I think it goes a little bit deeper with us in regard to, this is our contribution, to the Arizona. We want, and I don't have children, and our legacy is this story. One of these, part of our legacy is this story. And again, we're just so proud to be associated with it. we think it's going to be a great educational tool for not just bands around the country and around the world for those high school kids, but for everybody. And maybe this is a program that'll turn people on to history a little bit and get them to want to learn to do more.
Yeah, we want people. I mean, obviously in our documentary, we couldn't go into everything, but you know what it can do? It can start a conversation.
Yep.
And it can get people talking, and maybe it can get people to look back at their own history and maybe tell their grandparents' story, their great grandparents' story. Tell the stories, keep it alive.
Yeah, one of the things we found really cool was with some of the people that we've been in contact with, the relatives, they're like, wow, I didn't know that about my uncle. Wow, I didn't know that about this person.
Yeah.
And that's rewarding. You know, when Lou Conter's book comes out, it's going to be the same thing. There's things in that book that I'm sure that his family, his maybe even his children and his grandchildren are going to go, I didn't know that about Grandpa.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of stuff that I look at on that with Lou and go, holy crap, you know, this Lou did this. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much for spending your morning and early afternoon here in Las Vegas with us. We really appreciate you guys sharing your story with us, and we're very excited to check out that documentary when it comes out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hand it off to Weston back in Hawaii. So there you go, Weston.
Hey guys, yeah, that was an amazing presentation, so thank you for that. So on behalf of Pacific Historic Parks and Edutainment Learning, we would like to thank you for joining us today. Warren and Annette, it's been an honor to have you share your experience with us, and we really appreciate your willingness to share, and thank you for your service. Now, everyone, I just want to let you know, if you would like to view a band to honor, you know, visit the link I just put in the chat box, watch eventive.org, AnnWar Productions, and if I'm correct, it's going to be available on December 7th at 7:48.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. We're gonna,
So
For 48, it unlocks at that time and it's available for 48 hours.
yeah.
so you guys definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, and then it'll be coming later down the road, probably after the first of the year. It'll be on the video on demand channels and DVDs and things along those lines.
Okay, great. And then also in the chat box, we also added a short survey if any of you would like to share some feedback. If you have any questions that we couldn't get to, that you would like to have for Annette and Warren, we'd be happy to send it to them as well. And we also allow, if you folks wanted to put a small donation, to continue for us to provide these free interactive programs for guests. But other than that, you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for joining us. Mahalo.
Mahalo, everybody. Thank you.
Mahalo.